My name is Dr. Roopam Gupta, and I work as a manager, data science and AI specialist at Worm Technologies Private Limited. Right. So, as an intriguing part of my day is to actually look at different types of data and then trying to understand what kind of information we can extract from them, and then developing solutions which can actually be used in the day to day and can be used as a product. So my career started in AI ML since the time when I started doing my PhD. At the time, it was at a very nascent stage, and we wanted to explore the effect or the usage or the application of artificial neural networks on different types of data. Right. So I was working in an intersection of physics, medicine, and we wanted to understand if there is some algorithm which can be considered for extracting very useful and meaningful information out of that data. And artificial neural networks, which are now everybody knows as the artificial intelligence, was one of the options. And then I just got into this field, and I understood that that's not limited to one section but several other things. So that's where it started, and it's still continuing. So yeah. My education background is I have a PhD in the applications of machine learning in biophotonics and laser metrology, which I did from the University of St. Andrews. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, basically I explored this field because it was one of the very interesting aspect of how we can make sense out of data, right? So now for the people who are trying to get into the field, I think nowadays we have several courses in the field of computer science, or maybe many people are even doing mechanical engineering and then shifting into AI ML. Most important thing is that you need to read books, you need to go through all the latest blogs. If you're comfortable with blogs, go through those blogs and then try to increase your levels, right? So you start with the most easiest stuff where you can go through the simple language wherever possible, and then increase your level step by step so that you can learn about the mathematics, the nuances that are present in these fields, and then possibly you can get that level of expertise. Specifically for you don't really need a PhD to get into this field, but what you need is a typical and a good understanding of what these things mean and how these things work. The biggest challenge, actually, I would not say that AI ML has never been a huge challenge. It's just that you need to understand the depths and the foundations. That's my belief. Once you start from the very bottom and try to understand how this field works, or each and every screw and bolts work, then you are able to actually develop these things. However, I do understand if someone is coming from a non-mathematical background, it can be a bit challenging. For them, it becomes much more easier if you actually go step by step and try to understand, not go into too much depths or details, but try to understand how to apply these things in their specific fields. In the most layman terms, I would say that my work is to look at data and make sense out of it. Just keep going, start from the fundamentals. I would just repeat myself, start from the fundamentals, learn everything, understand everything, just not learn everything, but understand everything from the ground up, and then try to make sense of these things. Try to imagine, visualize as much as you can, and that helps a lot. So these are some of the misconceptions. However, what I found is the most interesting is that people need to know, people think that it's all about algorithms and neural networks, right? But reality is that about 70 to 80% of time we basically spend on preparing, validating and debugging the data, right? That is the major part of the work that actually goes into, and that's why I said, right, it's just about making sense out of the data, right? Another thing that you can say, that many people feel that any AI model can learn by itself, right? That's not really true. What we all need to understand is that it all depends on the data that we are training the model on and the quality of the data. So just to finish this up, we can just say that if you put in garbage, you'll get out garbage, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And if you send in good data to the model, it will give you the good results. So that's how it all works. Today's world, specifically today, coding, in my opinion, is not that important nowadays, right? What is the most important part is the critical thinking. Another thing is very important is to understand what the code looks like, right? If you have written the code, it's important that you're able to read it properly and you're able to understand it properly, and then make amends wherever required, right? So you don't need to write 1,000 lines of code and then try to debug each and every line. However, what nowadays you can do is you can just use one of the well-trained LLMs, and then you can just write your own script and set up the whole system by itself, right? Most interesting thing is that if you have critical thinking, if you have the knowledge of the things that you're trying to work on, right, and if you have the overall understanding of how things should work, then it becomes much more easier to develop a complete software solution nowadays compared to what we would say about 5 or 6 years ago. Basically, one of the things, as I mentioned, is the critical thinking, right? Then another thing is that you have to think beyond what you have really learned, right? So let's say that you are working in physics, you should also be able to understand how you can automate a given process if you are really working in an automobile company, right? So it has to be interdisciplinary. You can not only think about it from a physics perspective, but you also need to invoke chemistry and maybe sometimes biology as well, right? Another thing which is very, very important is curiosity, right? So a person needs to be absolutely curious, and they need to explore new tools, new frameworks, and if their time allows and if they are able to do it, they should explore new papers as well, research articles, reading them, understanding them, and trying to implement them is very, very important. Another thing is the problem framing ability, not only solving it but framing it, right? Today's most difficult task that I see in our teams and multiple different people is when we are able to talk, when we are having several discussions, many people come up with solutions, but very limited number of people actually come up with the problem framing ability, right? They're not able to frame the problem, but everybody has some solutions. So that is where we need to spend more time. So if you are trying to skill yourself, if you're trying to get into any kind of AI ML based career, then problem framing ability is one of the things that everybody digs for. So see, there are several industries. If you're talking about industries, then there are several industries where AI and ML is actually making a huge impact, right? Not from a traditional software engineering point of view, but actually solving the problems which people are looking at, right? So let's say one of the examples is in agri-tech, right? Another example is in construction, mining. Then we are looking at it from a fashion and textiles aspect as well. Then you have the waste management, recycling. Then you have entertainment, sports, etc., right? There's so many industries where you are implementing, since NLP has come into picture, since the first time people looked at ChatGPT and they could see that that is one of the solutions that people can use. People have been implementing it here, there, everywhere, right? Wherever they could actually use their mindset, they could use their abilities to actually think about the problems they're trying to solve. So that is these are some of the examples. Certifications, yes, there are several certifications that are provided by, like in Indian companies, are Udemy, or you can look at Coursera as well. There are several courses by IBM, several courses by AWS, several by Google as well. So these are some of the very interesting certifications that people can go through, and they are credit based as well. So you can actually earn credit through them. That looks really nice on, like, if I am looking at someone's CV and I can see that they have done those courses, then this gives them an edge. So again, so if you're talking about the technical skills, then you have to learn coding, right? If I see that someone is adept with a few programming languages, then I'm much more comfortable talking to them, and it gives me a bit of confidence that they have done certain projects as well. So in your CV, what I would be looking at is your number one is where you have applied your understanding. So how many projects or how many things that you have actually worked upon, and you have shown how useful these things can be. Second thing is, once you have written it in your CV, and when I am doing when I'm talking to you about it, then I would really like to understand that you have truly understood what you've done. It's not just sending some prompt to an LLM and then LLM spitting out some code. What I would like to see in a person is that they, if even if the code is present in front of them, they have actually at least given it a reading once, even if they are like trying to understand what are the different nits and tricks of the code, and then trying to implement or improve it. Because even today, whatever answers we are getting, they're not always 100% correct, and they can be further optimized. So the human brain is always much more smarter than a machine even today. Critical thinking, that's the most important thing. I would just repeat myself there. Like for many of these questions, the answers remain the same, right? So even if you're in a mechanical engineering branch, right, you've learned about how you can build a car, how an engine works, how you are actually pumping the fuel inside the engine, and so on, right? These are the different parts of a car, which, let's say you are an automobile engineer. But using a critical thinking, using that kind of a mindset, you can actually try to understand how these things are working, right, in details. And this is what is important right now in becoming an AI ML specialist, right? If you want to become an AI ML specialist, it's not only about coding, it's not only about looking at the screen and looking at logs all the time, but it's more about understanding how the nuts and bolts of these things are working. So if you spend about 6 months of your time, right, not more than that, just 6 months of your time to truly understand and gain these perspective into the field, I think anyone from any field can actually get into AI/ML. It should not be that difficult for anyone. Yeah, take courses, read books, and start looking into, like, the foundations of AI/ML. That's what I would think. Of course, like the problem framing mechanism, right? You need to understand how you can frame the problems, what are the different problems, right? What you can solve. So you cannot come up with, like, there were several examples where I have seen people looking at a given set of problems, and they're saying that, okay, I can use AI/ML to solve it. But what you need to really understand is that there is no one solution to every problem. What we need to understand is that what problem requires these kind of solutions, and that is the mindset that everyone needs to work as an actionable insight. They need to actually look at certain books and possibly go through the courses that Google, IBM, Microsoft is providing, and based on that they can get credits and much better understanding of these things that happen. So as a from a college student, people basically say that, you start by learning one of the languages, right? Let's say you start with Python and you become a Python developer, a full-time Python developer. Try to understand each and every nits and tricks of the given program, given language, and then try to implement it on the most basic problems, right? The next step actually comes into as becoming a data engineer. From a Python developer, you can understand how you are going to work, validate with the data. Then as a next step, you become a data scientist, where you start developing all of these aspects. Then is the next step is you become a manager as a data science. Then you become a senior manager, and so on. So each and every ladder, then you start bringing into the critical thinking, then you start bringing into leadership, then you start bringing into, several other aspects of AI/ML. However, the most important thing is, at every aspect you need to keep reading, keep learning, and have a continuous understanding of the field and the things that you're working on. You can say that one of the roles is of a product manager, right? So, see, general thing is that in the AI/ML field, you only need to be an engineer, or you only need to have an understanding of these things, where you are going to either work with the data or you are going to design some models, right? However, we all, in every organization, people are integrating the AI features, right? And they're trying to produce the products which would be useful for everyone, right? So every organization does need a product manager, and that role is actually very promising, right? Then another thing is, the possibly we can think about is uh, an infrastructure engineer, right? So developing solutions is one part of it, but then maintaining and integrating into a continuous flow is a different question altogether. That's where an AI infrastructure engineer, or ML ops infrastructure engineer can come into picture, or let's say LLM ops infrastructure engineer can come into picture today. Then one of the most important things that is coming today now is the ethics specialist, right? So AI policy and ethics is something that is coming up as the next set of jobs in AI/ML itself, space itself, where people are looking at the governance point of it and the ethics point of it, because there have been new EU, US, and India regulations as well, to make AI not only as a tool or an agent, but also take some responsible oversights, right? So that those things require some mandatory human oversights on the AI systems, which brings in another role of making someone as a AI ethics or policy specialist. One is mathematics, right? You need to understand mathematics for machine learning. You need to understand mathematics for statistics, and that brings in the understanding of what the data looks like, right? and it gives you a very strong analytical base for actually moving forward, right? The second thing is that you need to know about the algorithms. I know I mentioned previously that you don't really need the algorithms, but these are some intricate part of becoming an expert in this field. And if you want to implement, or if you want to make the data, you want to make sense out of the data, at that time you really need to understand the algorithms and then possibly implement them, so that you can productize not only your your system, but also whatever is required based on the given problems, right? And then the next thing is that you need to understand how to process data, right? How to pre-process or how to process data, understand the feature engineering, understand how you can scale the whole thing, how you can implement the missing values and so on, except there are several aspects. Then people also need to learn about model evaluations, then how you can actually evaluate. So let's say that you have developed certain models, how would you evaluate those models, right? That is another aspect which is very, very important. So yeah, there are a number of other things as well. So yeah. So there has been a huge change in the responsibilities of an AI ML engineer, because previously what used to happen is that people were moving on the data model building perspective. Now people have moved into a model integration perspective, right? So previously we used to develop CNNs, RNNs, LSTMs, or generative adversarial networks. Let me just provide you a full form. Convolutional neural networks, recurrent neural networks, long short-term memories, and generative adversarial networks, etc. Right? However, since the last 5 years, what we see that several pre-trained models, right, the foundation models such as GPT or Claude or Gemini, or in open source world you can look at Llama, Mistral, Quen, etc. They have come into picture, and people have moved from actually developing it from ground up into, let's say, fine tuning, or moving into a prompt engineering bit, or maybe using a RAG method, which is called retrieval augmentation generation, and trying to improve the overall deployability of these models rather than just developing these models, right? That is one of the things. The second thing is that previously we used to think about it as a more model centric AI, right? However, now we are looking at it from a more data centric AI, right? Where we are looking at better the data, the better the output quality, right? So previously we used to say no, more data is better quality, or a larger a model is a better quality. But today what we are looking at is that if your data is better, then you will have a better output, you will have a better quality to actually look at, right? The next thing is that which is actually coming up and which is becoming much more prominent now, is the edge AI, right? So edge and on-device AI, several small models, such as the very recently developed by Samsung was, I think it's called Tiny ML, right? Then there are some transformers like Llama models, which can be brought down to a sub gigabytes memory. Then there are Gemma models, which are like, let's say, 1 billion models. Then there are 5.3 models by Microsoft, and so on, which can be placed on the device, on the mobiles. So many people are actually developing smaller models, which can, and efficient, which can be used as a language model, not at the level of GPT, but still at a much more efficient level, which can provide you the specialist support for certain tasks, which can be done locally on your computer rather than sharing your data on the cloud, right? One of the most interesting thing that has been seen in the last 5 years is the collaboration between these LLMs and the software engineers, right? Many people complain about it, that these LLMs are producing not so good code. However, several of these teams, several of these people are actually now developing most of their softwares using the tools such as Claude or Windsurf or etc., which has Cursor or Windsurf or etc., or maybe GPT Codex, or Claude Code, etc. There are several tools now for developing a given software which you want to develop as the next step, and it has made everyone's life much faster, right? So, and there are several other things as well. So one of the things is that, let's say that uh, for automation and tooling. So most of the things now, previously we used to write all the things manually, and we used to set up those features, and we used to set up those hyperparameters, everything very manually, right? However, now the concepts of auto ML, vector databases, and orchestrating the frameworks, these things handle these repetitive tasks very well. So from a specialist perspective, the job definition has improved, and let's say it has evolved a lot, and it is evolving very fast as well, right? It's not only about AI, but about any technology, right? There was a time when people used to sew their clothes using their hands. Then they moved about using the sewing machine. Then we saw big industries, right, which are coming up, and they sew the clothes or they create your shirts in seconds or minutes, right? Instead of a person actually sewing everything from the bottom up for like sitting around for 2 days, and that was the job at the time. But that all changed. After that, another example is like, in the toll gates, right? So you go to the toll gates. Previously nothing was computerized, everything was done using a handwritten thing, and you needed 6 people sitting on the job. Now things are computerized, and they are actually moving towards making these people, these things completely automated, right? So similarly in AI as well, right? AI can replace tasks, right? It can replace tasks, but the whole job, right? That cannot be replaced. That is my belief, right? AI can be a great companion to you. So let's say that you are a fashion designer, right? And you want to design something. You have some, some thought process in your brain that, your shirt should look in a given way, or there should be some flowery petals in the shirt, and they should be mixed with some pink color and then the green color in a XYZ manner, right? At the time when like 5 years ago, when there were no LLMs or these were not there, let's say 5 or 10 years ago, people used to actually draw it on the notepad and then try to explain it to the artist who would going to actually develop it. Now the things have become much more easier from that sense, right? This is not replacing a fashion technologist or a fashion designer, but it is empowering them, right? So I would just suggest everyone to not fear from AI, but accept it as a friend and use it as their own agent rather than depending on them. Use them to improve their own overall functionality and the amount of work that you can do, just like a calculator. Look at the IBM courses on the foundations of machine learning and AI. So LinkedIn is one of the very interesting platforms where you can actually go around and never hesitate in looking up for people who are doing well in their fields. Do go and connect with them and try to talk to them. If you're living in the same city, try to join as many meetups as possible. If you're living in Bangalore or Mumbai or Delhi, there are several meetups that anyways happen. So people should go to them, talk to them, and learn about their own, from an interpersonal point of view. You can learn several things from the people who are experienced and have been working in this field for a long time. So inconsistency, number one. Number two, too good to be true. So if someone's English is too good and then their project proposal or the things that they've worked upon is not that good, I would certainly not consider it. The third thing is that if they don't have any skills, like the CV is actually for some other position, but they have given it for AIML, that also does not work. So if you want to switch into this career, depending on which field you are in, so let's say you have a strong mathematical background, then start reading on the foundations of AI/ML. However, if let's say that you are in a non-mathematical background, then still you can move into an AI/ML career, let's say from a generative AI perspective. So if you want to move into AI/ML, and you can go into any kind of fashion technology point of view, where you can set up certain designs, you can set up certain arts, and then you can put it up on the clothes, or example anything, right? So the only thing that you need to understand is how these machines, or how these LLMs actually provide you the response based on the given prompt, how clear you are with respect to your prompting. So the next thing that a person should actually do, the first thing, is to learn how to prompt, how what kind of answers you can expect from a given machine given the question that you ask. For a very general everyone, then yeah, use chat gpt, right, by OpenAI. That is one of the very interesting conversational AI tool which people can use, and possibly uh, work on, let's say, writing emails, right, creating strategies, doing discussions. Then for the people who are creative, I think Canva is one of a very, very interesting tools. Yes, you can. So basically, from a chat perspective, you can consider ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. All the three are really good. Then you can go for DeepSeek as well. From a writing perspective, let's go into a, like, a section by section thing. One is from a chatting and general purpose brainstorming, question answering. You can go to any of these chat bots or the chat windows, the UI that these companies have provided. For example, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. From an English writing perspective, or polishing your own stuff, then you can consider Grammarly. From a creative perspective, designing perspective, you can consider Canva. Now Figma is also coming up with AI tools as well. You can also consider yeah, these would be the three or four that I would actually suggest. It was excellent. It was great to talk to you, and I must say that all the questions were really nicely set up, and I really enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, so thank you.